In Harbor City, the streetlights bled amber onto pavement still damp from an afternoon shower. For Arya Lark, the city's rhythm was measured in flour, sugar, and the agonizing tick of the clock. At 29, she was a single mother, and her life was a blur of night shifts at the Sugar Finch Bakery and the consuming, brilliant love she had for her son, Milo. He was 6 years old, and he was the reason she pushed through the bone-deep weariness, packing pastries and delivering sweets for high-end events she could never dream of attending. Tonight, that weariness was overshadowed by a frantic rush. A last-minute order had come in, a towering wedding cake for a high-profile charity auction at the Glasshaven Pier. The event was sponsored by the Rourke Meridian Group, a name that hung over Harbor City like a steel canopy, synonymous with untouchable wealth and power. Miles above the pier, in a penthouse office insulated from the noise of the city, Cassian Rourke stared not at the view, but at the polished, empty surface of his desk, to the world. He was the billionaire philanthropist, the reserved, calculating mind behind the Rourke Meridian Group, in the shadows. He was the Don of the Viridian Syndicate, a title inherited and held with brutal, quiet efficiency. His phone, set to speaker, broke the silence. The voice was new, gravelly with ambition. It belonged to the head of the Aquila Union. "We hear you're putting on a party. Rourke, we thought we'd send a gift. We're going to test you tonight in front of all your polite friends. We want to see if the new Dawn bleeds." Cassian ended the call without replying. A public challenge. It was crude. He adjusted the cuff of his left sleeve. Arya's knuckles were white as she gripped the steering wheel of her worn sedan. She navigated the service entrance of the Glasshaven Pier, her car feeling painfully small next to the gleaming black trucks of the other vendors. The air was thick with tension. Men in dark suits, their lapels pinned with the Rourke insignia, were checking manifests with a grim intensity. One stopped her, his eyes scanning her delivery slip before waving her through with impatience. She hauled the heavy, boxed cake onto a trolley, her arms aching. As she maneuvered toward the freight elevator, a second guard, broader and with a sneer already fixed on his face, stepped directly into her path. "Loading bay is closed," he said, the words a challenge. "I have the main auction cake," Arya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's for the Rourke Meridian Group." "I don't care who it's for." He jabbed a thumb over his shoulder. "Back of the line." "But they said it was a rush. I have to—" He shoved the trolley. It was not a gentle push. It was a shove meant to humiliate. The box containing the cake wobbled violently. Arya lunged forward, gasping, her ankle twisting as she threw her body weight against the trolley to stop it from toppling over. She saved the cake, but the corner of the box was crushed. Her heart hammered. Adrenaline and fury, a bitter taste in her mouth. She was shaking. She looked at the man, who was watching her with open contempt. From a tinted glass balcony 2 floors up, Cassian Rourke watched the exchange. He saw the guard, a new hire from an external security firm. He saw the deliberate, petty aggression. He saw the woman, the baker, stumble and nearly fall. He watched her fight to save the box, her body tense. The guard muttered something foul, just loud enough to be heard. "Clumsy idiot. Now get it out of here." Cassian watched her. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She took one visibly deep breath, her eyes closing for just a second. She straightened her spine, adjusted the box on the trolley, and pushed it past the guard without giving him another glance. Cassian noted the stillness she possessed, the iron control. He filed her face away, unseen by the guards. 2 men in well-tailored suits mingled near the bar, sipping mineral water. They were undercover agents from the Federal Commerce Bureau, a new agency with a mandate to follow the money. They believed the Rourke Meridian Group's legitimate businesses were the world's most sophisticated laundry, and tonight's art auction was the rinse cycle. Arya got the signature, handed off the cake, and ran. She checked her watch. She was late. She had to get Milo from Starling House Daycare. She practically sprinted to her car, her mind spinning. As she pulled onto the main boulevard, she glanced in her rearview mirror. A black, heavily tinted SUV was behind her. It stayed behind her for 3 blocks. When she took a sudden right, it took the same right. Her stomach tightened. She made 2 more quick, unnecessary turns. The SUV mirrored her every move. Then, as abruptly as it had appeared, it sped past her and vanished into the evening traffic. Aria pulled over for a full minute, her hands trembling on the wheel, before driving to the daycare. Back at the pier, the auction was in full swing. Cassian's own head of security approached him, handing over a velvet box, the key for the centerpiece display. "Sir." Cassian took it. He ran his thumb over the wax security seal on the box. It was a perfect forgery, but it was not his. The ridge was a fraction of an inch too high. Someone on his internal team, someone with access to the highest level, had replaced it. Cassian smiled, a thin, cold expression, and slipped the key into his pocket. He would let the traitor think they had won. He would let them take the bait. The first fireworks of the opening ceremony exploded over the water, casting brilliant flashes of red and gold across the pier. In the shadows of the service bay, the rude guard who had hassled Aria was smoking a cigarette. A figure stepped out of an unmarked door. The figure gestured toward the street. "The baker, the one with the cake." "What about her?" the guard asked, confused. "You're going to mark her," the figure said, his voice flat. "She was at the freight lock when the seal was swapped. She saw the handoff. Even if she didn't know what she was seeing, the Aquila Union doesn't like loose ends." Aria had barely made it back to the daycare, scooped up a sleepy Milo, and returned him to their tiny apartment before her phone buzzed with an email from the event manager at Glasshaven Pier. Her payment was being withheld. The email was curt, citing a security discrepancy with her delivery. The cake, apparently, had been linked to a breach. Anger, cold and sharp, cut through Aria's exhaustion. They were blaming her. This was the money she needed for Milo's preschool deposit. She bundled a protesting Milo back into his jacket, dropped him at her neighbor's for 30 minutes, and drove back to the pier, her cheap sedan a stark contrast to the line of limousines now idling by the entrance. She bypassed the service entrance, walking straight through the main lobby. The reception hall was a sea of crystal and silk. She found the event manager, a stern woman with a clipboard near the main ballroom entrance. "Excuse me," Aria's voice was low but clear, cutting through the polite murmur. "I'm Aria Lark from Sugar Finch. You're withholding my payment based on a lie." The manager looked down her nose. "This is not the time or the place. Your delivery compromised the security of the Rourke centerpiece." "My delivery did exactly what it was paid to do." I handed it off. "What happened after that has nothing to do with me." "Are you calling my staff liars?" "I'm saying I am not lying." A few heads turned. The guard who had shoved her trolley appeared at the manager's elbow. A smug look crossed his face when he saw Aria. "This is the one I told you about," he said to the manager, loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "Caused a scene at the loading bay. Probably damaged the goods herself." He took a step toward Aria, looming over her. "You need to leave, sweetheart. This party is for important people." He was blocking her path, using his bulk to intimidate her. He was too close, the smell of cheap cologne and cigarettes filling her nose. "Get out of my way," Aria said, her voice dropping to a warning. Or what he sneered. He reached out, his thick fingers aiming to grab her arm, to physically manhandle her out of the building. Aria reacted without thinking. The sound of her palm connecting with his cheek was sharp, a crack that silenced the entire hall. The music seemed to stutter. The guard froze, his face a mask of shock and reddening skin. Every guest, every waiter, every security detail turned to stare. The silence was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket. Then, a figure detached from the shadows near the grand staircase. Cassian Rourke moved with an unhurried grace that was more menacing than any sudden motion. He stopped directly between the stunned guard and Aria, his body a solid, impassive wall. He did not look at the guard. His eyes, a cool, unreadable gray, were on Aria. "Are you all right, miss?" "Lark," he asked. His voice was quiet, yet it carried effortlessly in the silence. Aria's hand was stinging, her chest heaving. She could only nod, her throat tight. Cassian turned his head slightly, just enough to fix the guard with a look. The guard, who'd been pale with rage, now seemed to shrink. "She is my guest," Cassian stated. It was not an explanation, it was a verdict. He then looked at the event manager. "See that this man is removed, permanently." Across the room, an amateur videographer, hoping to catch local celebrities, had his lens trained on the entire exchange. He zoomed in, capturing the billionaire Don shielding the unknown baker. The clip was already uploading. Cassian turned his full attention back to Aria. The crowd was still watching, paralyzed. He leaned in, his proximity startling. He was close enough for her to smell the clean, expensive scent of his suit, close enough for his words to be for her alone. His voice was a low murmur against her ear. "Now they'll fear you." He pulled back, and a smile touched the corner of his mouth. It was not a warm smile. It was a smirk, sharp and predatory, a flash of teeth that acknowledged the blood in the water. It was a smile that made the onlookers, the wealthy and the powerful, take an involuntary step back. He straightened his suit jacket. "Rourke Meridian will pay the invoice from Sugar Finch. 3 times the agreed-upon amount," he said, his voice returning to a normal volume. "We will also cover any legal expenses you may incur from this evening's inconvenience." Aria found her voice. It came out steelier than she felt. "I'm not your charity, Mr. Rourke. I want what I'm owed, nothing more, and I don't need your lawyers." Her pride was the only armor she had, and she refused to let him buy it. Before Cassian could reply, her phone vibrated in her pocket. The ringtone, a cartoon theme song, was jarringly loud. She fumbled for it. It was her neighbor. "Aria, thank God. Milo feels really warm. He's got a slight fever, 101, and he's asking for you. He's crying. Panic, cold and immediate. Replace the anger. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She snapped the phone shut, her face ashen. She looked at Cassian. "All pretense of confrontation gone. I have to go. My son is sick." She pushed past him, desperate to get to the exit. "Julian," Cassian said, not raising his voice. A man in a driver's uniform appeared at his side. "Take Miss Lark home. Use the Bentley." He pressed a small, metallic object into his driver's hand, a slim, magnetic GPS tracker. "See that she arrives safely. Do not lose her." He had seen the way the other guards, the ones from the external firm, had watched her. She was being tracked. Aria was about to refuse, but the thought of Milo, combined with the driver's impassive, professional face, made her relent. She just wanted to get home. She sank into the plush leather of the back seat. The car was silent, gliding through the city streets. As they neared her neighborhood, Eon Square, she saw it, the same black SUV from before. It was parked 2 streets down, its engine idling. The driver, Julian, saw it too. His eyes met Aria's in the rearview mirror for a fraction of a second. Without a word, he turned left when he should have gone straight. He navigated a series of narrow, one-way alleys, his driving smooth and fast. He took a route Aria didn't even know existed, looping around the block. When they emerged onto her street, the SUV was gone. He pulled up directly in front of her apartment building. "You're safe, Miss Lark." Back in his penthouse, Cassian stood before the wall of glass, his head of security. Rhea Vale stood beside him. "The driver confirmed it," she said. "A black Escalade. No plates. Aquila Union signature. They were waiting for her." Cassian nodded, his jaw tight. The amateur video of the slap was already circulating, labeled "Billionaire Rourke Defends Mystery Woman." The Aquila Union had wanted to test him publicly. They had, by marking his baker. She was a loose end, Cassian said, more to himself than to Rhea. She was at the loading bay when the seal was swapped. Now, she's a variable, and she's the only living witness who can place that guard at the scene. The slap had just painted a target on her back, and his protection had just painted a bigger one. Milo's small body was a furnace against hers. He had been sleeping fitfully for hours, tucked into the corner of her sofa, the only place he felt safe when he was sick. Arya sat on the floor, her back against the cushions, listening to the two sounds that defined her neighborhood, the relentless. Hissing rain against the window and the distant, searching wail of a tri-state narcotics directorate patrol car, the TND. Harbor City's answer to the drug trade, haunted Eon Square. Their heavy-handed presence, a constant reminder that the law was just another group of men with guns. She hadn't slept. She kept thinking about the SUV, the way it had mirrored her turns, the cold, professional patience of it, her phone, which she'd plugged in on the kitchen counter, suddenly illuminated the small, dark room, a text message, an unknown number. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She picked up the phone. The message was simple, just a few words. Keep your mouth shut. Remember the SUV. Her fingers fumbled, nearly dropping the phone. Below the text, a second message loaded. It was a photograph, a grainy, nighttime shot of her, standing at the service entrance of the Glass Haven Pier, her face pale and anxious. They had been watching her. They had been watching her the entire time. Arya's throat closed. This was not a random threat. This was a direct, calculated warning. Her first dizzying instinct was to call the police. She had evidence. A text, a photo. But what would she tell them? That a powerful billionaire had been kind to her. And now she was scared. The Harbor City police rarely came to Eon Square unless they were making an arrest. Her experience as a single mother, navigating a system that wasn't built for her, taught her one. Brutal lesson safety was found in silence. Cops asked questions that could lead to trouble, questions about Milo, about her fitness as a mother. She would not risk that. She would not risk him. With a trembling thumb, she deleted the message. Miles away, in the silent penthouse, Cassian Rourke was not looking at the rain. He was in his office, the only light coming from a massive, high-definition screen. The smooth, complex notes of a vinyl jazz album filled the air, a stark contrast to the scene he was analyzing. He had the security footage from the pier, not the low-resolution feed given to the police, but the raw data from his own encrypted system. He slowed the footage. Isolating the moment of the handoff, he saw the Aquila operative, disguised as a caterer, pass the false key box to Cassian's own head of security, and he saw the operative's eyes. They weren't on the target, they were on the background. He followed the man's gaze and froze the frame. There she was, Arya Lark. She was pushing her cake trolley, her back partially turned, but she was in the operative's line of sight. He had seen her. He had registered her presence in the secure corridor during the exact moment of the breach. Cassian zoomed in, his jaw tightening. The guard she had slapped, he was Aquila, too. His job was to create a public disruption, to draw eyes away from the service corridor during the swap. But Arya's slap, her refusal to be intimidated, had changed the narrative. She hadn't just been a witness. She had inserted herself into the conflict, and Cassian, by defending her, had lit her up like a beacon. He hit the intercom. Rhea, my office. Rhea Vale, his strategist and right hand, entered moments later. She was all business, her eyes sharp. The video of the slap has 250,000 views, she said without preamble. The media is calling her the Harbor City Lioness. Good, Cassian said, not turning from the screen. The Aquila Union wants to silence a witness. They think she is a disposable piece of civilian collateral. We are going to make her the most visible civilian in the city. Rhea waited. I want a civilian shield, Cassian continued, turning to face her. I want the Rourke Meridian Group to publicly champion the Sugar Finch Bakery. I want her story. The single mother fighting against the odds on every news outlet in this city. I want her so tied to my legitimate brand that if she gets so much as a paper cut, the entire city looks to the Aquila Union for answers. You're painting a target on her, Cassian, Rhea argued quietly. I'm putting her in a suit of armor, he countered. They can't get to her in the middle of a media spotlight, Not quietly. The next morning, Arya was elbow-deep in dough when a man in a crisp uniform wheeled an enormous arrangement of white orchids and lilies into the tiny sugar finch. The display was so large it barely fit through the door, blocking the front counter. Arya stared at it, her hands covered in flour. "I didn't order this." "Arya Lark," the man asked. She nodded. "It's for you." A thick, cream-colored card was tucked into the leaves. The Rourke Meridian Group crest was embossed at the top. She opened it. "Injustice isn't my style. My apologies for the complications." It wasn't a note. It was a dismissal. It was the billionaire's way of paying her off, of closing the file on the complication she represented. It was for charity. Arya hated charity. "I'm refusing the delivery," she said, her voice flat. "Ma'am?" "Take it back. All of it. I don't have room for it." She watched the delivery man struggle to wheel the opulent display back out to his truck. An hour later, her shop phone rang. "Miss Lark, this is Cassian Rourke." Arya's stomach tightened. "Mr. Rourke, my driver has just returned a small forest to my lobby. I'm told you refuse my apology." "I don't need an apology, Mr. Rourke. And I don't accept gifts from men I don't know. It makes us complicated. I don't want to be complicated." There was a long, heavy silence on the line. "And what do you want?" "Miss Lark." This was her chance. Her one chance. "You want to make this right. Rourke Meridian owns 4 hotels in this city. Their breakfast pastries are terrible. I want the exclusive supply contract for all 4, a public, transparent, legally binding contract. No favors, no special arrangements, just business." The silence this time was shorter, and she could almost hear the smile in his voice. "You don't want to be protected. Miss Lark, you want to be armed. I want to be able to pay my rent, Mr. Rourke, on my own. This contract makes me visible. It makes me legitimate. It makes me someone who can't just be erased. My legal team will have a contract drawn up and delivered to you by 4 o'clock this afternoon," Cassian said. And the line went dead. He respected her boundary. He would not interfere with her life, not unless he was invited. But in the shadows of Harbor City, the Aquila Union had already made their move. They didn't care about contracts or media shields. They needed leverage. They needed to force Cassian's hand. They decided to kidnap the baker. Late that afternoon, just as Arya was wiping down her counters, the bell over her shop door chimed. A woman entered, wearing a bright trench coat and a disarming smile. "Arya Lark, I'm Jules Penn with the Harbor City Journal. I'm doing a story on female entrepreneurs, and I'd love to feature the sugar finch." Arya's guard was up. "I'm not really interested in publicity." "Oh, it'll be great for business," Jules insisted, pulling out a notepad. Her questions started harmlessly how she started, her most popular items, but then they shifted. "It must have been terrifying. That night at the pier. You were so brave. Did you see anything unusual?" "Anything at all. I heard the whole security team was fired." The questions were too sharp, too precise. "I think you should leave," Arya said, crossing her arms. "Right, of course," Jules said, her smile faltering. She fumbled in her bag for a business card. As she pulled her hand out, a small, laminated ID card caught on the zipper and fluttered to the floor. Arya bent to pick it up. Her eyes saw the logo just as Jules's hand snatched it away. It wasn't the Harbor City Journal. It was the Federal Commerce Bureau. Jules's face went pale. I do some consulting." Arya held her gaze. A Fed was in her shop. Jules backed out the door. Arya locked it behind her, the deadbolt sounding like a gunshot in the suddenly silent bakery. She was trapped. The bell over the Sugar Finch's door chimed, a cheerful, tinkling sound that was completely at odds with the vehicle parked outside. A mirror-black Bentley idled at the curb, and its owner, Cassian Rourke, had just stepped inside her tiny shop. The space suddenly felt impossibly small. Cassian filled it, not with noise, but with a dense, quiet presence. Milo, who was coloring at a small table in the corner, looked up. His eyes went wide. Cassian's gaze softened as he looked at the boy. Then he turned to Arya. "Miss Lark." "Mr. Rourke," she replied, her hands automatically dusting flour onto her apron. The contract was acceptable. "I'm glad." He gestured to the man in the driver's suit standing at the door, who brought in a small, elegant box. "My apologies for the intrusion. This is for Milo." Milo, forgetting he was supposed to be shy, bounced over. Inside the box was a perfect, heavy, die-cast model of the Bentley parked outside. Milo's gasp was one of pure, 6-year-old adoration. "What do you say?" Milo Arya prompted, her voice tight. "Thank you," Milo breathed, already tracing the car's silver grille with his finger. Arya looked at Cassian. She walked to the cash register, took out 3 $20 bills, and walked back, holding the money out to him. "I don't accept expensive gifts, Mr. Rourke, for me or for my son. You can take the money, or you can take the car." Milo's face started to crumple, his eyes fixed on his mother's outstretched hand. Cassian looked at the money, then at Arya's unwavering, defiant stare. A slow smile, different from the one at the pier, touched his lips. This one held genuine respect. He took the $60 and tucked it neatly into his suit pocket. "Thank you for your business, Miss Lark," he said. "One more thing," Arya said, crossing her arms. "You are a client. The Sugarfinch is your vendor. That is all we are. Do not get involved in my private life." "I respect that," Cassian said, his gaze holding hers. "But the world doesn't always respect boundaries. Arya, I'm just the client, but I would advise you to be careful." He nodded to Milo, and then he was gone. The warning proved prophetic. 3 days later, Arya was making her first large delivery to the Rourke flagship hotel. As she turned onto the downtown loop, she noticed a gray sedan in her rearview mirror. It stayed 2 cars back, but it was there. When she exited, it exited. When she changed lanes, it changed lanes. A cold sweat broke out on her neck. She pulled into the hotel's chaotic loading dock, her hands shaking. 2 men got out of the sedan and started walking toward her van. They were not wearing uniforms. "Arya Lark," a voice called out, sharp and familiar. Rhea Vale stepped out from a staff entrance, holding a clipboard. "You're late. We have to use the freight elevator. The main dock is jammed." She grabbed Arya's arm, her grip like steel, and steered her toward the elevator, leaving the 2 men standing uselessly in the middle of the dock. As the heavy steel doors slid shut, Rhea hit a button for a restricted floor. "They were Aquila," Rhea said, her voice low. "How did you know?" Arya whispered. "It's my job to know. Next time, don't stop. Call the number on this card." Rhea pressed a blank, black business card into her hand. "It rings directly to me. We got you out this time. Next time, they might not be so polite." That evening, Cassian called. "I hear your delivery was eventful." "Your woman, Rhea, she was there." "Rhea is never anywhere by accident," Cassian said, "which is why I'm calling. Milo likes space, does he not?" Arya was instantly on guard. "What?" "The Lumen Maritime Museum. My group funds it. Tonight, they are tracking a meteor shower. I've arranged a private after-hours viewing on the rooftop observatory, just for Milo, to see the shooting stars. You can bring him, if you wish." It was a test. It was a kindness. It was a manipulation. She hated all of it. But then she pictured Milo's face, his recent obsession with planets. "Why are you doing this?" "Because he's 6 years old," Cassian said simply, "and no one should be followed home. 8 o'clock. Julian will pick you up. It's safe." Arya relented, for Milo. The museum was silent and dark, the exhibits like sleeping skeletons. They took a private elevator to the glass roof. The city lights were a carpet of diamonds below, but the ceiling was a vast, open sky. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. Milo, given a professional telescope to command, was in heaven. Arya stood by the railing, wrapping her thin cardigan around her. Cassian came to stand beside her, not too close, leaving a respectable distance between them. "You've lost something," he said, not a question. Arya startled. What?" It's the look of someone who has lost something they can't get back, and not something physical, he clarified, his voice quiet. Time, sleep, the belief that things will be okay. I see it in the mirror every morning. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Not as a billionaire, not as a Don, but as a man. I lost my trust, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. The idea that if I just worked hard enough, the world would leave me alone. It never leaves you alone, he said. It just changes its reasons for bothering you. Milo suddenly yelled, I saw one a space rock. Did you see it, Mom? Arya and Cassian turned, both smiling. They listened as Milo launched into an elaborate, wildly inaccurate explanation of comets and aliens. Cassian didn't correct him. He didn't try to be a father or even an uncle. He just listened, asking Milo serious questions about which planet the aliens were from, his expression intent for a few brief moments. They felt like a normal group of people. The feeling shattered when she got home. Julian had dropped them off, waiting until they were inside the building. Arya went to put her key in the lock of her apartment. The door was already open a crack. The wood around the lock was splintered. She shoved Milo behind her, her body going cold. Milo, stay right here. She pushed the door open. The apartment was still. Nothing seemed to be missing. Her laptop was there. The small emergency fund she kept in the cookie jar was untouched. But on her kitchen table, a pile of mail she hadn't sorted had been disturbed. An invitation, which had been at the bottom, was now on top. It was for a charity gala for the Harbor Clean Fund. The event, she now realized, was being held at an address known to be owned by the Aquila Union. They hadn't stolen anything. They had just let her know they could. A knock on her open door made her scream. Jules Penn stood there, her press-on smile looking brittle. Arya, oh my God, what happened? I was, in the neighborhood, doing a follow-up on your bakery, the Rising Star. How did you know where I live? Arya asked, her voice flat. Public records. Just listen, was this a break-in? Did you see anyone? Jules fumbled in her bag, pulling out a pen, and just like before, the laminated ID card fell to the floor. This time, Arya didn't pick it up. She just stared at it. Federal Commerce Bureau. You are incredibly clumsy, Miss Penn, Arya said, her voice ice. Or you just think I'm stupid. Jules snatched the card, her face flushing. I don't know what you mean. Arya just looked at her, at the jimmied lock, at the disturbed invitation. Feds, gangsters, billionaires. Everyone was lying. She suspected all of them. She slammed the door in the federal agent's face. Her phone was already in her hand, dialing the black card Rhea had given her. It rang once. He's here, Cassian's voice said. He was already on the line. They were in my home, she said, her voice shaking with rage. Not fear. I'm sending a team. Armed guards. They'll be there in 5 minutes. No, Arya said, taking a deep breath. No. You can put an alarm system in my shop. You can put a guard out front, but not my home. My home is mine. That is the boundary. There was a long pause. I understand, Cassian said, his voice heavy. The shop it is. But they will be watching your building. Arya, whether you see them or not. The invitation from the Harbor Clean Fund arrived on embossed cardstock, smelling faintly of expensive ink. It was a formal request for the Sugarfinch to provide the centerpiece dessert for their annual charity gala. Arya held it between her thumb and forefinger as if it were contaminated. She was about to throw it in the trash when her phone chimed with a text from an unknown, encrypted number. The invitation accepted. She stared at the screen. A moment later, a new message. It's Cassian. We will use this to expose the inside man. Take the job. Arya felt a familiar knot of anger and fear. She was being used as bait. She texted back one word, how. The reply was instant. Rhea will brief you. Rhea's plan was audacious, a high-stakes con disguised as catering. The Aquila Union uses these events to move data and money, Rhea explained. Meeting Arya in the back alley behind the Sugarfinch, they're expecting you to be the entertainment. We're going to use you as the delivery service. Rhea produced a tiny, micro-thin data card. This is a tracker. It's a fake. It pings a dead-end signal. But they'll think it's our entire financial ledger. We need you to embed it. Rhea pointed to the sketch Aria had submitted for the cake. Here, in this decorative sugar work, you'll make two. One with this fake tracker and one with the real one. The real one stays with you until Cassian gives the word. And they'll just steal it? Aria asked, her voice hollow. They'll have someone on the inside, a waiter. A busboy, create a distraction and lift it. When they do, we'll follow the signal. We'll expose their courier route and the inside man all at once. That night, Aria practiced in her small kitchen after Milo was asleep. She worked with the molten sugar, her hands steady, embedding the dummy card into a delicate, spun sugar cage. It was intricate work, requiring absolute focus. Milo, woken by the sweet smell, padded into the kitchen. He watched her for a moment, his eyes heavy with sleep. Are you making stars, Mommy? Sort of, baby. A cage for a star. He picked up a blue food-safe marker and carefully drew a wobbly shooting star on the side of the plain white delivery box. So it won't be scared in the dark. Aria kissed the top of his head, her heart aching. It was a small, warm moment of family in the middle of a cold, dangerous game. The night of the gala, the ballroom was suffocating. Cameras flashed, wealth and power dripped from every guest, and the air was thick with perfume and insincere laughter. Aria, wearing a simple black dress and a vendor's pass, set up her dessert. And then she saw him. He was surrounded by politicians and city council members, laughing, his hand on the back of the mayor. Elias Voss, the name Cassian had mentioned, the leader of the Aquila Union, masquerading as Harbor City's most generous philanthropist. He looked directly at her, smiled, and raised his glass in a toast. Aria's blood ran cold. She finished her setup and moved to the designated vendor area near the kitchen. As the main course was being cleared, the lights in the ballroom did not go out. Instead, they flickered once, twice, and then shut off completely, plunging the hall into absolute darkness. There were screams, then nervous laughter. A backup generator must have failed. It lasted for exactly 7 seconds. When the emergency lights flickered on, the guests were disoriented, bumping into each other. Aria looked at her cake. It was untouched, but the small, ornate sugar cage she had placed beside it on the platter was gone. A message lit up her phone. Rhea, bait taken. Signal is live. We are moving. From his surveillance van a block away, Cassian watched the tracker move. He's in a service van, heading south. Feral Docks, Rhea, take your logistics team. Lock it down. On it, Rhea's voice crackled. Wait, we've got company. 2 FCB vans are right on our tail. Cassian swore. It's Penn. She must have tipped them. It's a setup. Jules Penn was playing both sides, hoping to catch the Aquila courier and Cassian's team in the same net. Let the feds have the docks. It's a fake lead anyway. Stand down, return to the perimeter. Back in the ballroom, the lights were back on, and the orchestra was playing loudly to cover the disruption. Aria stood alone, her heart hammering. Her part was over. Then her phone vibrated. A new number, a new text. We're with the kid. Aria's vision tunneled. She couldn't breathe. A picture message began to download. It was Milo. He was asleep in his bed, his face peaceful, his favorite stuffed bear tucked under his arm. Leave the gala now. Walk to the north exit. A black car is waiting. If you are not in it in 2 minutes. He wakes up in a warehouse. She was shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. She hit the speed dial for the black card. Cassian answered on the first ring. They have Milo, she choked out, her voice breaking. They sent a picture. He's in his bed. They're in my apartment. They told me to go. Cassian, they're going to take him. Aria, listen to me. His voice was calm, a blade of steel in her panic. Where is Milo supposed to be? With my neighbor, Mrs. Velez, in her apartment, 10B. Give me 10 seconds. The line was silent, but not dead. She heard the faint click of him on another line. Then he was back. My man at your building confirms, Mrs. Velez and Milo are watching a movie. They are fine. The picture. Aria. Look at it. Look closely. She forced her blurry eyes to focus. The bear. Milo hadn't slept with that bear in 6 months. It was in his closet. The pajamas. They were his old ones. The ones with the rockets, 2 sizes too small. It's old, she whispered, the realization dawning. It's from the daycare. Cashin's voice was grim. They hacked the school's old photo cloud. They are not in your apartment. They are trying to lure you out of the building. They want you outside, away from my security. The elevator to the north exit dinged open in front of her. A black car was idling just outside the glass doors. I'm going to your apartment right now. Just to be certain, Cassian said, Aria, do you understand they are playing you? Aria looked at the open elevator. She looked at the black car waiting in the dark. They wanted her to run. They wanted her to panic. They were pulling her leash. She took a deep breath, straightened her dress, and let the elevator door slide shut. She turned around and walked back into the center of the crowded, brightly lit ballroom, her head held high. She sat down at an empty table in the full view of the cameras, a defiant island. She would not run. She would save herself by staying put. From the surveillance van, Cassian watched her on the internal security feed. He watched her ignore the text. He watched her refuse the bait. A profound, undeniable respect settled in his chest. She was not a victim. She was a strategist. The drive from the gala to Cassian's penthouse was a silent, high-speed blur. Aria had refused to go to her own apartment, refused to let Milo stay with Mrs. Velez, not until Cassian had put his own eyes on her son. Cassian had met them at the neighbor's door, and for the first time, Aria saw her 6-year-old son look at the imposing billionaire with something other than awe. He looked at him as a protector. Now, hours later, Milo was asleep in a guest room far down the marble hall, a room larger than her entire apartment, with 2 of Cassian's most trusted men standing guard outside the door. The penthouse kitchen was a vast, sterile expanse of steel and glass, but Cassian had turned on only the small, golden lights under the cabinets. It made the space feel intimate, isolated from the city glittering below. Aria sat on a bar stool, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. Cassian leaned against the opposite counter, watching her. He's safe. Aria, they won't get in here. That's not what I'm afraid of, she whispered, her voice rough from the strain. His expression, usually so guarded, softened with confusion. What, then? I'm afraid of this. Of you. She looked up, her eyes meeting his. I'm afraid of being a name in your black book, a complication you have to manage. I've spent my entire life fighting to make my own decisions, to be my own person, and now I'm a pawn. You move me. Aquila tries to take me. I'm just a thing to be fought over. My fear isn't of the Mafia, Cassian, it's of losing my own free will. Cassian was silent for a long time, the only sound the faint hum of the building. He pushed off the counter and walked to her, stopping just in front of her. Then I will make you a promise, he said, his voice low and absolute. I will not manage you. I will not move you. You define the boundaries. I will protect them. That is all. The sincerity in his voice was a physical thing, a warmth that reached her in the cold. The distance between them, which had been a chasm, was now just a few inches of air. She'd spent her life trusting no one, and now she was faced with a man who dealt in shadows, yet had just offered her the one thing she craved: respect. Her hand, which had been trembling, lifted. She didn't think about it. She just acted. She reached out and touched the back of his hand, where it rested on the counter. Her fingers were light, a question. He didn't move, didn't pull away. He simply turned his hand over, palm up, letting her make the choice. Her fingers trembled again, but then, taking a sharp breath, she threaded her hand through his. Her grip tightened, a small, defiant act of trust. He looked at their joined hands, then at her mouth, then back to her eyes. Slowly, he leaned in. It was not the kiss of a conqueror. It was a kiss of inquiry. Slow, deliberate, and achingly gentle. It was a question, and she answered by not pulling away. His other hand came up, not to grab, but to rest on her jaw, his thumb brushing softly against her cheekbone. The kiss deepened, but it remained unhurried. It was about the discovery of her, the taste of her, the soft sound of her breath. Arya's free hand came up, not to push him away, but to rest flat against his chest. She felt his heart, a steady, solid thump beneath her palm, a living, real thing. It was an anchor. He broke the kiss only to look at her. Without a word, he cupped his hands under her thighs and lifted her, seating her on the cool marble countertop. The move was effortless, but he didn't press his advantage. He stopped, his hands still on her, his body a breath away from hers. "Continue," he asked, his voice rough. Arya looked into his eyes. She saw the power there, but she also saw the restraint he was holding. For her, she saw the man, not the Don. She nodded once. Then, smiling a small, genuine smile, she wound her arms around his neck and pulled him back to her. The warmth that had been a spark was now a wave. It was in the air they breathed, in the space between them. His lips found hers again. And this time there was a new urgency, a shared need. His mouth moved from her lips to her jaw, and she tilted her head back, giving him access, a silent, trusting offering. Their clothes remained on, a barrier of civility, but she felt the heat of his body through the fabric. His breaths became shorter, matching hers. His whispers were honest words against her skin, telling her she was safe, telling her she was strong. There was only the scent of his skin, the solid, living presence of him, and the shared, quiet understanding that this was a boundary they were choosing to cross together. And then the golden lights of the kitchen faded into a soft, respectful darkness. Arya woke to the smell of coffee and pancakes. She sat up in a bed that was large enough to be its own territory, a soft robe pulled at her feet. She put it on and followed the sound of a small, bright laugh. In the kitchen, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Milo, perched on a bar stool, was giggling as Cassian Rourke, the most feared man in Harbor City, carefully flipped a pancake. It was shaped like a star. "Mommy, look, Cassian is making star cakes." Cassian looked up as she entered. He was in trousers and a simple black t-shirt, his hair slightly damp. He looked domestic. He wasn't trying to be a father. He was just a man, making pancakes for a little boy who liked space. It was a fragile, impossible scene of normality, and it made her heart ache. He poured her a coffee, his hand brushing hers as he passed her the mug. After breakfast, while Milo was watching cartoons, Arya found Cassian on the balcony. "That can't happen again," she said quietly. He turned. "The pancakes. You know what I mean. Us. Not until this is over." She set her terms. "If this is going to be whatever this is, I need two things. First, transparency. No more lies about your business. I need to know what I'm in. Second, and this is the one you don't bend, Milo is never, ever in danger. He's never a part of it. He's never leveraged. The moment he is, I am gone." Cassian didn't hesitate. Agreed. On both. Miles away, Rhea Vale was not looking at pancakes. She was looking at a data stream. "I found her," she said into her secure line. "Jules Penn. She wasn't just working for the FCB. She's been digging into the Viridian data, using the Aquila case as cover. She's playing both sides, trying to get her own payday." Cassian was cold. "Take her off the board." "With pleasure," Rhea said. "Not like that," Cassian interrupted, his voice sharp. He looked through the glass at Arya, who was watching Milo. "Not with blood. I want you to leak her. Send an anonymous tip to her bosses at the FCB. Give them proof that she's been compromising the federal investigation to get to me. Make her a burned pawn. Aquila loses their inside source, and the FCB cleans up its own mess." The meeting took place in a building scheduled for demolition, the air thick with plaster dust. Cassian Rourke stood alone in the center of a vast, empty floor, facing three figures in dark government suits. They were the executive board of the Financial Integrity Commission, a federal entity so discreet it barely existed on paper. "You're asking for a temporary legal shield for Rourke Meridian," the lead commissioner stated, his voice flat, "in exchange for unverified data on a competitor. I am offering you Elias Voss and the Aquila Union," Cassian corrected him, his voice cool. "I am giving you their entire money laundering apparatus routes, accounts, and the politicians they own. All you have to do is follow the map I provide. In exchange, you give my legitimate enterprises the space they need to breathe while you clean the house. You get the win, and I get a quiet quarter." "This is vigilantism, Mr. Rourke." "This is efficiency," Cassian countered. "You've been trying to pin Voss for 5 years. I'm giving him to you in one night." While Cassian negotiated in the world of shadows and steel, Arya was in the world of logistics and flour. She was in Rhea's high-tech office, a place that looked more like a mission control center than a corporate suite. They were reviewing delivery manifests. "It doesn't make sense," Arya said, tracing a route on the large smart screen. "My contract is for pastries, but I'm being routed with the refrigerated trucks for seafood and produce. Why?" Rhea froze, her eyes zooming in on the manifest. "Because they're not checking your truck," she said, her voice grim. "They're using your legitimate, Rourke-contracted delivery as a cover. Your truck gets waived through security. The refrigerated truck, which is running with you, is carrying Aquila's hardware. They're piggybacking on your clean signature." Arya looked at the calendar. "The Mercy Row Art Parade. It's next week. They're using it as cover for a major exchange, aren't they?" Rhea nodded. "It's their biggest move of the quarter." "Then we change the route," Arya said, her mind working with the same precision she used for complex recipes. "We don't just expose the route, we become the route. I'll make the gala cake. We'll say it's a donation from Sugarfinch, but this time we put a real tracker in it, not a data chip, a thermal marker, something that shows heat, something they can't just wipe." She looked at Rhea. "I'll hide it under a layer of fondant. They'll never find it until it's too late." The Federal Commerce Bureau, now reeling from the internal investigation into Jules' pen, was desperate for a clean win. Cassian, through a cutout, fed them the new plan. The FCB agreed to provide semi-public cooperation. They would secure the perimeter of the art parade, a visible presence that would force Aquila's delivery team to stick to their one pre-planned route. The day before the parade, Arya's shop phone rang. She answered, expecting a supply order. "Miss Lark, Elias Voss." The voice was smooth, like oil over gravel. Arya's hand tightened on the receiver. "You've been causing a stir. Little Baker, I admire that. I admire enterprise. So, I'm going to make you an offer." He paused. "The Harbor Clean Fund is prepared to grant the Sugarfinch a lifetime endowment. Whatever you need, new equipment, a larger space, a new apartment for you and the boy. Consider it a gift for your silence." He was offering to buy her, to put her and Milo in a gilded cage. "Mr. Voss," Arya said, her voice clear and cold, "my shop doesn't sell its soul." She hung up the phone. That night, Cassian found her at the penthouse, packing the thermal marker into a small, heat-proof silicone bag. He put his hand over hers, stopping her. "You heard what he did," Cassian said. "It wasn't a question. He threatened your shop, your home. He's going to escalate. I'm giving you the veto. You say the word, and this entire operation stops. We pull you and Milo out of the city tonight. We will find another way." Arya looked across the living room. Milo was sitting on the floor with one of Cassian's security men, a mountain of a man named Frank, who was patiently letting Milo arrest him with a pair of fuzzy blue handcuffs. Milo was laughing, a bright, pure sound that filled the sterile, expensive room. Her gaze hardened. She turned back to Cassian, her hand closing over his. "We don't stop," she said, her voice full of iron. "We finish this." The next day, the media landscape exploded. A local gossip channel accidentally received a new clip of the Glass Haven Pier incident. It was the video of Arya, but it was cut. It showed only her, looking furious, and the moment her hand connected with the guard's face, it cut away before Cassian spoke. The narrative was immediate and unstable. Violent woman attacking a working man at a high-class event. The comments online were brutal. She was called a gold digger, a welfare mom trying to score a payout. Arya's stomach churned, but before she could even spiral, Rhea Vale moved. Cassian didn't issue a statement. He didn't make a threat. He simply uploaded the full, unedited, high-definition security footage from his own servers to every major news outlet in the city. The world saw the full clip. They saw the guard shove her. They heard him verbally abuse her. They saw her stumble. They saw her refusal to be bullied, and they saw Cassian Rourke, the city's untouchable billionaire, step in and say, "She is my guest." The narrative didn't just flip. It caught fire. Arya wasn't an attacker. She was a symbol. She was every woman who had been intimidated, pushed, and talked down to. She was a single mother who had drawn a boundary. The public sympathy was overwhelming. The Harbor Clean Fund, whose name had been mentioned in connection with the event, suddenly found itself under the harsh, unwelcome glare of a full-scale public audit. Elias Voss was humiliated. The media stunt had backfired, and Cassian had used his own move against him. The response was brutal and immediate. The next morning, flyers were plastered all over Aeon Square, Arya's neighborhood. They were photos of her apartment building, with a simple, terrifying message. The baker doesn't back down. The entire block burns. People panicked. This was not a world of billionaires. This was a world of working-class families. Aquila was threatening to burn them all to the ground to get at one woman. But Cassian had anticipated the move before the panic could turn into a riot. A fleet of luxury Rourke-owned buses arrived. Cassian's private security, polite but firm, began evacuating the entire building, floor by floor. "Mr. Rourke has arranged temporary accommodation for all residents of Aeon Square at the Meridian Grand Hotel." The head of security announced, "All food, lodging, and transport will be covered for the duration of the emergency." Arya, who could have stayed safe in the penthouse, was on the first bus. She wasn't a victim. She was a neighbor. She moved through the terrified crowd, her voice calm. She coordinated with the security team, identifying the elderly on the upper floors, helping mothers with small children pack medicine and diapers. She wasn't the cause of their fear. She was the center of their safety. The community, which could have turned on her, rallied around her. They were her people. And she, backed by the quiet, overwhelming power of Cassian Rourke, was not going to let them fall. The night of the Mercy Row Art Parade was a cacophony of street music, flashing lights, and the humid energy of a packed crowd. Arya sat behind the wheel of the Sugar Finch delivery van, her knuckles white. The fondant-covered cake sat in the back, its harmless appearance belying the thermal marker embedded deep within its layers. Rhea Vale sat in the passenger seat, her calm exterior a stark contrast to the chaos. She wasn't looking at the parade. She was monitoring a small, flickering screen on her lap. "We're live," Rhea said, her voice low. "The marker is active. He's at the drop point." Arya pulled the van into the flow of traffic. Just another vendor for the event, a block behind them. Cassian's armored Bentley, looking sleek and unremarkable in the night, shadowed their every move. At every major intersection, Arya could spot them dark-suited men with FCB-issue earpieces, blending imperfectly with the crowd. Milo was safe, tucked away in a Rourke-owned safe house outside the city, watching movies with Frank, the bodyguard he now adored. "The signal's moving," Rhea said, her brow furrowing. "He's not at the drop point, he's heading west." Arya's stomach tightened. "A new route." "No," Rhea said, her fingers flying across a keyboard. "He's circling. This is a test." The thermal ping on the screen moved, then moved again. "That's 5 times. He's changed his location 5 times. He's leading us." "Where?" Arya asked, her voice steady. Rhea zoomed out on the map. He's pulling us away from the parade, away from the FCB perimeter. He's heading for the Black Crest rail tunnel. A text message lit up the dash-mounted phone. Cassian, it's a trap. Pull out. Before Arya could respond, Rhea said, Too late, we're committed. They have men blocking the street behind us. Then we go through, Arya said, her jaw set. She floored the gas pedal, the small van lurching into the dark, gaping mouth of the abandoned rail tunnel. The darkness was absolute, broken only by their headlights. He's in here, Rhea said. Signal is strong, 300 yards ahead. Arya sped forward, the van rattling over the old tracks. Suddenly, a bright flash erupted in front of them. A small explosive charge, not meant to kill, but to cripple. Arya wrenched the wheel to the left, avoiding the small crater. Another flash, this time on the right. They're boxing us in, Rhea yelled. The third charge detonated directly in their path. The world exploded in white light and a deafening roar. Arya slammed the brakes, but the van was already airborne, crashing down with a scream of tortured metal. The path was blocked by a pile of rubble. Behind them, headlights flooded the tunnel. Cassian's Bentley. He hadn't just followed. He'd entered the trap with them. An Aquila vehicle, a heavy-duty truck, burst from a side tunnel, ramming the Bentley from the side. Sparks erupted as Cassian's armored car was thrown against the tunnel wall. He fought the wheel, spinning the car a full 180 degrees, its reinforced chassis taking the brunt of the impact. The maneuver was a brilliant, desperate act of defense, placing his car as a shield between the Aquila truck and Arya's disabled van. Arya's heart was in her throat, but her hands were steady on the wheel. She saw the truck, saw Cassian's car. She saw Rhea deploying a small, wasp-like mini-drone that shot from the van's broken window, zipping past the fight and trailing a thin, chem-luminescent green smoke. It was marking an escape route through a ventilation shaft. The FCB is on the far end, Rhea said, but they're blocked. We're on our own. The fight outside the van was brutal. Cassian's men, exiting the Bentley, were now in a close-quarters firefight with the Aquila team. Then, a new voice cut through the chaos, booming from a loudspeaker. Cassian Rourke. Enough games. On a platform above the tracks, illuminated by a single harsh spotlight, stood Elias Voss. He was not alone. He held a woman in front of him, a gun pressed to her temple. The woman was gagged, her face pale with terror. Jules Penn. She played us both. Cassian Voss shouted, his voice echoing. A fitting shield. Don't you think call off your dogs? I want you to come out, alone, unarmed, or the Fed gets a very messy retirement. Cassian emerged from behind the Bentley, his hands raised, palms open. His suit was immaculate, untouched by the chaos. He walked calmly into the center of the spotlight, his face a mask of cold indifference. You're a predictable man, Elias, Cassian said, his voice carrying. And you're a fool, Elias laughed, coming here for a baker. Even a billionaire knows fear, I see. He's not the only one who came, one new voice said. Elias spun. Arya stood on the roof of her own van, her face smudged with soot. In her hand, she held a portable loudspeaker, one that had been packed for the art parade, and it was on, broadcasting every word. Her phone pressed against its microphone, streaming the audio live. The whole city is listening. Elias, Arya projected, her voice, amplified, shaking the tunnel. Tell them about the Harbor Clean Fund. Tell them how you used it as a front. Elias's face contorted with rage. You stupid... He never finished. A new set of headlights flooded the tunnel, this time from behind Elias, a second Aquila team. Boss, one of them shouted, the feds are coming. We have a new offer, a bounty on Rourke. They'll pay double if we bring him in, not you. It was a double cross. Elias's own men, drawn by the live stream and the promise of capturing Adon, were there to seize the opportunity. Chaos erupted. The new team opened fire on Elias. Elias's guards fired back. It was a three-way war. Cassian moved in the first second. He wasn't running to his car. He was running to her. He grabbed Arya, yanking her from the roof of the van and pulling her into a shallow alcove in the tunnel wall, shielding her with his entire body as bullets ricocheted off the brick. The noise was deafening, the air filled with smoke and the smell of cordite in the tiny, cramped space. Arya was pressed against him. He was a solid, warm wall of protection. He looked down at her, his eyes searching hers, asking the question he couldn't speak. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just held his gaze, her hand gripping the front of his suit. It was not a gesture of fear. It was one of solidarity, complete, absolute trust. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was drowned out by a new sound. A dozen high-pitched sirens. The FCB, guided by Rhea's drone, had found a way in. They swarmed the tunnel from both ends, their tactical gear and superior numbers overwhelming the fractured Aquila teams. "Drop your weapons on the ground, now!" Cassian and Arya watched as gunmen were thrown to the ground, their hands cuffed. The FCB had captured almost all of them, including a badly wounded Jules Penn. But Elias Voss was gone. Cassian spotted the movement, a small, iron service hatch in the floor. Thrown open, it led down to the old, forgotten subdocks. Elias had escaped. The penthouse was silent, a fortress of glass suspended above the wounded city. The chaos of the Black Crest tunnel felt a lifetime away. Though it had only been hours, Cassian had brought Arya and Milo straight here, to the one place he knew was impenetrable. They found Milo in the vast living room, not watching cartoons, but sitting cross-legged on the floor with Frank, the bodyguard. They were folding paper boats, a small fleet of them. From the pages of a discarded financial report, Milo was happy, chattering away, completely oblivious to the war that had just been fought for him. Arya felt her knees go weak with a relief so profound it was almost painful. Later, after Milo was asleep in his secure room, Arya stood by the window, a glass of water in her hand. The bay was a sheet of black ink. On the television, muted on the wall, a news anchor was detailing the catastrophic collapse of the Harbor Clean Fund. The live feed showed FCB agents carrying boxes of evidence out of the organization's headquarters. The chyron beneath read that the Rourke Meridian Group had, in a stunning act of philanthropy, set up an indefinite support fund for the displaced residents of Eon Square. Arya looked at the screen, then at Cassian, who was watching her. "You knew," she said. "It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. You always had a way out. You built a firewall." "My father," Cassian said, his voice quiet, "believed that the Viridian Syndicate should control the city through fear. He dealt in drugs, in human misery. He turned the name Rourke into a shadow. When he died, he left me a corrupt empire." He came to stand beside her, his reflection joining hers in the glass. "I've spent the last 10 years cleaning it. I built the legitimate side, the hotels, the shipping, the tech into a fortress. I built it so that one day I could take the other half, the part my father loved, and cut it off, burn it to the ground. I was preparing for a war. Arya. I just never expected a civilian to get caught in the middle of it." His confession hung in the air, a raw, painful truth. Arya turned to face him, the city lights painting her in blue and gold. "You're still in the middle of it. Cassian, you're still the Dawn. If you want a future with my son and me, you have to choose. You have to choose the light. No more gray." He didn't hesitate. He raised his hand, his fingers tracing her jawline, his touch surprisingly gentle. "I already chose Arya. I chose the night at the pier, when I saw you refuse to be broken." The moment, fragile and clear, was shattered by the chime of the elevator. It was Rhea. Her face was grim, her usual calm replaced by a cold fury. "We have a problem," Rhea said, striding into the room. Elias escaped because he was warned. The double cross in the tunnel was a mess, but he had an exit route that the FCB didn't know about, one that wasn't in the schematics I had. He had help from inside. "Inside," Cassian's voice went flat. "I've been running the logs. Voice analysis from the security comms during the pier incident. Encrypted data transfers from our server, Rhea said, her voice clipped. It wasn't just a guard, it was the man who hired him. It's Mark Dre, your head of security. He's been feeding Elias information from the very beginning. He was the one who swapped the seal. The name hit Cassian like a physical blow. Mark, a man who had been with his father, a man he had trusted with his life. As if summoned by the name, Cassian's personal phone, the one on his secure network, buzzed on the table. He picked it up. It was a video file, sent from an unknown source. He pressed play. The video was from the lobby of the penthouse, timestamped just 30 minutes ago. It showed Milo, holding the hand of a female household aide, walking toward the elevator to see the fish in the lobby's grand aquarium. The video was clear, stable. Then, from the left side of the frame, Mark Dre stepped into view. He didn't approach Milo. He just stood, watching. He looked directly into the security camera, the one he knew Cassian monitored, and he smiled. It was a twisted, victorious leer. "Lock it down," as Cassian's voice was a roar. "Lock down the whole building. Find Frank. Where is Frank?" Arya didn't wait. She was already running, a primal scream building in her throat. She sprinted down the hall, shoving past security men who were scrambling at Cassian's command. She burst into Milo's room. He was there. He was safe. He was sitting on the bed, looking confused. "Frank went to the bathroom," Milo said, his voice small. Arya grabbed him, pulling him into an embrace so tight he squeaked. She buried her face in his hair, shaking, her heart a wild bird in her chest. He was safe. Cassian and Rhea entered the room behind her. Cassian was pale, his fury a palpable, vibrating force. Frank was there, his face ashen. "Sir, I just stepped out for a minute. It wasn't you," Rhea said, her voice cold. She was looking at the small table by the door. A simple, white envelope rested on the polished wood. It hadn't been there a minute ago. It was addressed to Cassian. He tore it open. The note inside had only 3 words. "Don't trust Rhea." The air was sucked from the room. The betrayal was a razor, and now it had a new, impossible edge. Mark Dre, the proven traitor, was pointing the finger at his most trusted lieutenant. Cassian's gaze lifted, slowly, to Rhea. Arya, still clutching Milo, looked at her too. The silence was agonizing. Rhea did not flinch. Her eyes, clear and steady, met Cassian's. Then she looked at Arya. "If I had betrayed you," she said, her voice perfectly level, "if I was working with Dre, do you really think he would have let you get to this room? Do you think you would have been allowed to read that letter? This is his last, desperate move. He's trying to cut you off from your own arms." Cassian. Arya, her heart still hammering, thought of the loading dock. She thought of Rhea's hand, grabbing hers, pulling her to safety. She thought of Rhea's drone, marking the escape route. "She's right," Arya said, her voice shaking but firm. She stepped forward, putting herself between Cassian and Rhea. "I trust her. She's the one who's been pulling us out of the fire. Mark is trying to blind you before he strikes." Cassian looked at Arya, at her fierce, unwavering defense. He saw the logic. He saw the truth. He nodded, the tension breaking. "He's trying to sever my head from my body. He's trying to make me doubt my own strategist." He turned to Rhea, his trust absolute once more. "He's cleaning house, and he's overconfident. We set the final trap. Now." "It's already been proposed," Rhea said, holding up her phone. "Elias has gathered what's left of his forces. He just sent a message. He's summoning you. Dawn to dawn, he wants to settle it, a final settlement at the abandoned Blackspire Light Factory. Tonight." The Blackspire Light Factory was a skeleton of steel, moaning as the storm battered Harbor City. Rain lashed through the broken skylights. Lightning flashed, illuminating the cavernous space in fractured, electric blue snapshots. Cassian Rourke walked into the center of the factory floor, into a single, swinging work light that Elias had arranged. He was alone. "How predictable, Cassian," Elias Voss's voice echoed. He stepped from the shadows of a rusted catwalk, and beside him, his face a mask of bitter resentment. Was Mark Dre, the traitor, fully revealed? "I brought leverage," Elias sneered, gesturing to the shadows. Two of his remaining men shoved a figure forward, a heavy blanket draped over their head, bound to a chair. "Now, the accounts, all of them." Elias pressed a knife to the throat of the shrouded figure. Cassian did not move. "No." Enraged, Elias roared, "You'd let her die." He ripped the blanket away. It was a mannequin, a tailor's dummy. Strapped to its chest was a high-fidelity audio recorder, its red record light blinking. "He's playing you, boss," one of the Aquila men yelled, just as the high, piercing whine of FCB tactical teams filled the air. Red laser dots painted their chests. They were surrounded. Mark Dre saw his end. He didn't run. He pulled a concealed pistol, a small, fast weapon, aiming it at Cassian's heart. "If I go down, you go down." A shot cracked, sharp and clean, but not from Mark's gun. It came from the high rafters. Rhea Vale, sighted with a long rifle, fired once. The bullet tore through the meat of Mark's hand. His gun clattered to the steel floor. Another gunman, hidden on a lower level, fired at Cassian. Arya, who had been concealed with Rhea, reacted without thinking. She grabbed a loose piece of rubble, a heavy brick, and threw it with all her strength. It struck the second gunman's arm, sending his shot wild into the steel beams above. Elias was a cornered animal. He saw Arya emerge from her cover. In a desperate final lunge, he grabbed her, his arm a steel bar around her throat. He dragged her backward toward the edge of a raised catwalk, his feet slipping on the wet metal. "Stop!" he screamed at the advancing FCB agents. "Everyone stop, or she goes over." He held her over the edge. The 20-foot drop to the concrete below. "Choose. Rourke your offshore accounts, or her, the transfer codes. Now." Cassian Rourke stepped forward, away from his cover, his hands raised. Palms open, he dropped his secure phone, sliding it across the floor. "Let her go." "The codes," Elias screamed, his grip tightening. Arya looked at Cassian. His eyes were only on her, full of a terrifying, calm focus. She took a ragged breath, the smell of ozone and rust in her lungs. "I am not," she panted, her voice a raw gasp. "Merchandise." She drove her elbow backward, jamming it hard and high into Elias's ribs. He grunted, his grip loosening for just a fraction of a second. It was all she needed. She twisted her body, breaking free. As Elias lunged to grab her again, Cassian was already moving. He crashed into them, not grabbing Elias, but grabbing her, wrapping his body around her as they both tumbled away from the edge, rolling into the safety of a rusted steel girder. The moment was broken. The FCB swarmed in, their commands echoing. "On your knees, hands in the air." Rhea descended the ladder from the rafters. She walked straight past the FCB agents who were cuffing Elias. She looked him in the eye, then calmly took her own cuffs and locked them around his wrists, replacing the federal ones. "This one, she said, her voice deadly quiet, "is personal." Mark Dre, clutching his ruined hand, was apprehended on the mesh staircase. The Aquila Union in one night was gone. The factory lights, which had flickered, finally died, plunging them into the storm's darkness, broken only by the blue and red flashes of the federal agents. Cassian was still holding Arya. He looked at her, his face streaked with grime, his decision absolute. "I choose the light," he said, his voice raw. "No more gray." He was true to his word. The next day, Cassian Rourke held a press conference. He announced the immediate and permanent dissolution of the Viridian Syndicate. He turned over every illegal asset, every offshore account, every ledger. He offered the entire sum to a new Eon Square Restoration Fund. He accepted, without negotiation, a full civil investigation into all his legitimate businesses. He didn't take a deal. He took the consequences. Weeks later, Harbor City felt different. The Sugarfinch Bakery was no longer just a shop. It was a community center. Arya was using the Rourke funds, now clean, to offer free baking and business classes to women from Eon Square. Rhea Vale, having resigned from Rourke Meridian, accepted a new position, executive director of the Harbor Restoration Fund, using her strategic mind to rebuild the very areas the syndicate had once bled. The final scene was not in a penthouse, but at the bay. The wind was gentle, the storm long gone. Milo was at the water's edge, launching the last of his paper boats. Cassian was with him, not looming but kneeling on the ground, at his level. "Milo," Cassian said, his voice quiet, "if you agree, I would like to stay for a long time." Milo looked at this man, then at his mother, who was watching them, a soft smile on her lips. Milo didn't say anything. He just launched his boat, then turned and threw his small arms around Cassian's neck. Arya walked over, ruffling Milo's hair. She looked at Cassian, her eyes dancing. "You know," she teased, "I slapped one of your men the first time we met. It was a terrible first impression." Cassian stood, pulling her and Milo into a loose embrace. He looked at her, the smirk that had once been a weapon. "Now just for her. I know," he said, his voice low, "and from that moment, they fear you." He kissed her, a real kiss, full of sunlight and promise, as the wind blew the paper boats out to sea. A new morning rose over a harbor city. There were no more black SUVs idling on street corners. There was only a small red bicycle, Milo's, parked outside the Sugar Finch. Laughter, bright and loud, spilled from the open door. Arya and Cassian, holding hands, walked inside to start the day, their future, finally, and completely, in the light. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to hear your thoughts, so please comment below and let us know where in the world you are listening from. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Story. Do not forget to like this video and give us extra support by hitting that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.